So let me talk about the two activities that I'm going to use to teach Austin. So just a couple heads up. On my monitor, I've got pulled up the sources I'm going to refer to. I'll link them to you, Dr. Stickle, and I'll link them in my exam. But just that way I can refer to them by name because I don't remember the names exactly and the author. And then also, once again, I have just some notes to kind of make sure I hit everything I want to hit. Going through these two activities I have to do with Austin, or I'm going to do with Austin. So, one thing I really wanted to take into account, and this is just kind of assuming that I'm going to be working with Austin on more of an individual basis, is his passion for video games. So, he mentioned he really likes video games, and so that was something I definitely wanted to incorporate somehow in the activities I do with him. That way they feel less like schoolwork or homework, because I know it was mentioned that children that are Polish students often feel overburdened by homework. So, or at least that was mentioned by a majority of the parents. And so I wanted to make sure that I gave him something I didn't necessarily feel totally like schoolwork, that he was having fun doing. And so the first thing I want to do is really make sure Austin understands the morphology and what morphology is and how it's basically can be described as what is a word, what makes a word, what can we add to it to change it, and thus forth. So the first thing I wanted to do was I initially thought about doing like a Jeopardy game with him, but I was doing some research on some Jeopardy games and actually stumbled upon this really interesting source. It was called Playing Jeopardy in a Classroom, an empirical study, and it's by Mark G. Simkin. And it was a really interesting study because it really delved into the advantages and disadvantages of playing Jeopardy. And he used actually, I don't remember the exact age range he was looking at, but that's irrelevant. Anyway, he was looking at the effects. Is it just beneficial to students? And overall, the conclusion was that it really didn't make a huge difference in necessarily the outcome for the students. And actually in the reviews that students done at the end of the semester, they didn't mention the Jeopardy games at all. So that kind of had me nervous to do a Jeopardy game because, excuse me again, I've been hit with hiccups all of a sudden. But it kind of had me nervous because I want to definitely do something that's going to benefit Austin in the long run. And so I kind of, taking inspiration from the source and the criticisms and things that it mentioned, I thought, well, why don't we combine Austin's interest in video games and build our own Jeopardy game? And so the first, I guess you could say, big assignment I would have for Austin would be to build his own Jeopardy game. And this is definitely more task-based instruction. So where he's going to get his benefit from morphology from this is I'll help him with necessarily building the game. If he wants to take a flashcard approach or if he wants to do a digital approach to building this Jeopardy game, we can do that. But as far as all the information that's got to go in there, I'm going to give him some requirements. Like I want him to definitely put derivational and inflectional affixes in there. I want him to actually put the definition of those words in there as well as an option. I want him to cover different parts of word structure. So just a couple examples would be like the root or the base form of a word. Also want him to make sure he includes all the different processes that come with morphology, like conversion, reduplication, and so forth. And so the first real big assignment for him would be to build this Jeopardy game. And this is going to benefit him in two ways. The first way is he's getting to build his own game. He's starting to fall into that video game interest, and he's going to learn all these morphology terms. He'll have to at least look at all these morphology terms and experience them to be able to put this in this Jeopardy game and create these questions and answers. The second way that I want this to benefit him is that so if we have exams or if we have an immersion program or something where he is feeling nervous that and he needs to review his morphology, he's going to have this game that he built that he can go back to. And so he can study in a more beneficial or more fun way for him because of his interest in video games. So that's kind of the first assignment I have for him. The second assignment I have for Austin comes, and it's another one that I kind of got some information from a cool study I found online. And so this one was called, I was looking up some different ways to kind of incorporate video games and morphology into ESL classrooms. And so this was a study from the International Journal of Innovation, Creativity, and Change, and it was titled Video Games, the Game Changer in Teaching Writing for ESL Learning. And so this study was with some university students, and the game that they particularly looked at was PUBG. And it was really interesting because it found that it kind of incorporating phrases and things that these students were experiencing from the video game PUBG, it really interested the students and made them participate a lot more. And even though this article takes an approach focusing on writing, I kind of took some ideas from this article and built my own study idea for Austin. And so, kind of using the same basic outline that this article used, I would have Austin come into class, and I want him to pick some of his favorite video game quotes from whatever his favorite games are, as long as they're school appropriate, favorite video game quotes. And what we will do in class with a couple of them, of course, and then I'm going to give him some homework. He can choose some quotes and break them down. But I would go through these quotes with him, and we'd sit down and we'd pick some of the multi-syllable words from these quotes, if they have any, and break them down. So I've got 4 examples of quotes here, and I'm not going to go through all of them just for the sake of time, but I've got a couple examples from them. So the first quote is actually from PUBG. It would be "Winner, winner, chicken dinner." The second quote was, "I used to be an adventurer like you, then I took an arrow in the knee," from Skyrim. That one's a little bit more humorous. The third one would be, "You were almost a Jill sandwich," from Resident Evil. And the fourth one was, "Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?" from Far Cry 3. And so I would have several different things I want Austin to do with these quotes. The first one would be go through and make word trees. So I've got just a couple little word trees here. I know they're kind of hard to see because of my phone being at an awkward angle, but I would ask him to build or draw out these word trees and break these words down, these multi-syllable words. I would ask him to go through and pick out the multi-syllable words, break them down. Second, I would ask him to label, if they were inflectional or derivational. Also would ask him to label the word structure. Is it a verb, noun, adjective, preposition, and just different aspects of the word, just like we've done in our class with our morphology breakdowns. This is what I would expect of Austin to do. And so this is kind of taking a combination of communicative learning and form-focused learning, because while Austin is also breaking down these words and saying these quotes, I would correct his phonology and help him in mainstream American English pronunciation of some of the words that he mentions, Because I did see in that video you linked of the Polish woman speaking English, it was really interesting how she really drew out certain syllables and put a lot of stress on certain syllables. Most of the time it was kind of next to or close to the base word, or it was the base word itself. What I remember specifically sticking out to me was working. In English we say working, but she said working. She really drew out the work. And so this activity is kind of hitting both of that phonology and the morphology of English, because it's hitting phonology because I want him to say these phrases, these video game quotes, and I will correct him on his phonology. And then it's hitting his morphology because he's got to break down the bigger words in these quotes, and he's got to be able to label the different parts, which he already should know what they are because he built a Jeopardy game going over all the different parts of a word. So everything comes back together. So that's kind of just the activities I have for Austin, and I'll link all this stuff down below. So thank you.